Hi there, and welcome to How To with Ann Malum. When deciding to do this podcast, I really wanted to create something that could give people real tools on how to execute on certain things. So often we talk about things on such a macro scale that, yes, leaves people inspired, but with no real idea on what the steps are to make something in their own life happen. I challenge and encourage and probe my amazing guests to get granular and specific on their strategies, their mindset, their tactics, and their methodologies so that you can learn practical, actionable steps to best optimize your confidence, career, health, and wealth. What's up, everybody? Welcome to How To with Ann Malum. Today, we are fortunate to have Jay Siano with us, and Jay's how-to is how to get dialed in. Jay is a New York-based entrepreneur, commercial real estate and wellness executive who has been instrumental in advising and scaling some of the most successful brands in the world, like Chipotle, Starbucks, Orange Theory Fitness, Massage Envy, European Wax Center, and of course, he works with me on Solid Core and Ambition. In 2010, Jay co-founded Sabre Real Estate Advisors, which quickly became one of the country's most influential location-based real estate advisory firms. Jay resides in New York City with his wife, Danielle, who I know very well, and their sons, Jax and Jace. What's going on, Jay? How are you?
What's up, Ann? I am pumped for today's discussion.
Yeah, me too. Jay's one of my close friend guys. So Jay and I talk, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So this will be a fun conversation because I know how aligned we are about life values, lifestyle, what we're trying to achieve and accomplish. So Jay, why don't we just let everybody know a little bit about you? If you want to just give some history of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure.
We'll dive into a few fun topics here.
Yeah, sure. So grew up in New York, went to college, University of Arizona, really, really far from New York. And unfortunately, when I was in college, my mother was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I went to the University of Arizona as really more so as the life experience, and ended up, becoming a DJ, nightclub promoter, enjoying that lifestyle through college. And then my mom unfortunately passed away after I graduated, shortly after I graduated, which really caused me to focus on what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And that's, a big part of my story.
Yeah, totally. And then, so what did that mean for you from career wise? Like, how did that change? And then how did you end up in New York?
Yeah, so I actually was planning to stay out west, but after my mother's condition worsened, I felt like I had to come back for obvious reasons, wanted to spend time with her, still had, hope that she would be able to recover. And she did. She was in remission several times, but moved back to New York, and really at that time did not know exactly what I wanted to do, but knew I had to be back, with the family. My family was in the automobile business. And I started having discussions with my father about coming into the family business, but knew that I would not really be able to work with him very well, and that it also wasn't something I thought would be my calling. So, always being super independent, I wanted to find something that I could really do on my own and that I was passionate about.
And how did you figure out that real estate?
So I ended up, I was living in New York City, and I had a job as an assistant buyer for men's Prada, men's Miu Miu. So I was heavy into fashion. So I would work all day at the Prada offices at 50 West 57th Street. And then I would leave and I would go DJ or promote, nightclubs and whatnot. In the evenings, and typically party through the night and then show up for work the next day with one eye open. So that was kind of a habit that I formed early on in that lifestyle. That only lasted about a year or so. And then I had an opportunity in an online advertising company because I was very interested in what was happening with the .coms, internet advertising. I'm somebody who's really fond of branding and marketing. So I saw that as an opportunity to kind of just grow my resume, which I did. But once I got there again, less than a year or so in, I was like, this is not something I want to pursue for the rest of my life. And ultimately, when I started going too much down into a downward spiral, I would say, I I realized that my mother would want me to actually focus and pick myself up and start a career that I was excited about for the future. Real estate was always something that I was very interested in, and I started to interview with all the bigger firms and ultimately took a job with a smaller boutique retail real estate company, which is how I ended up doing what I do today.
Yeah. And if you have to tell people what it is that you do today, I know I read your bio, but in your own words, what does Jay Siano spend his time on today?
Yeah, so I actually help founders and C-suites of unique emerging concepts scale. And, what does that mean? That means that, if I'm working with a company that has 5 to 20 locations, it's very different than if I'm working with a company that has 20 to 100 locations and so on and so forth. So we really understand a business, try to understand what the goals are, the 10, 5, 3, 1 year goals are, reverse engineer the strategy to help the company get where it wants to be. And a lot of what we do, the backbone of that is really the real estate side of it. So we design a rollout strategy for companies, both through traditional ways as well as, AI today, a lot of high tech stuff that we have access to. And we're able to really, dissect the core customer for a company and find where they are, and then ultimately negotiate the real estate deals and do a lot more things. But that's really, kind of a good basic description.
Yeah. And if you, Jay, if you can think back to that time, let's call it 20 years ago, what were your values 20 years ago?
My next party.
Yeah. And what do you think it was you were chasing back then? Because Jay and I spent a lot of time just riffing on, behavior and our own behavior and the things that we do and trying to help other people who, frankly, are unfulfilled or unhappy, but in this cycle. And a lot of that is based off of emotion, right? People are chasing, and a lot of the things we do, why we do is involved in some emotion, good or bad, righteous or not. It's just important to pay attention to what it is we're trying to feel, because then it helps us figure out, why we're chasing this thing. So can you put yourself back in that place? What did you think you were going to find at that party?
My next high, whatever that was, dopamine, right? So I was just constantly chasing the thrill. We would, everything that we did was really revolving around, having a good time. And I also, like, later on in life, now I realize a lot of that was numbing, what I was going through, the trauma of my mother being sick, the trauma of her passing. And, I kind of solved for that, not by really getting down to the root of the problem, but by numbing myself primarily through alcohol. And then, ultimately becoming a workaholic. So I kind of, I figured if I could never stop, I'd never have to really sit with the pain. And that really is what started me off, down that kind of negative spiral of just numbing myself to get by.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting, because more so today than ever, we live in this world where it because of productivity, efficiency, you almost feel like successful or smart when you get the quick dopamine high, right? The thing that's like right there in front of you and it makes you feel good. You can convince yourself almost that it's smart, that a shortcut that other people, sort of don't. But you and I have come a long way. For those who don't know, and, I guess unless Jay and I both have really changed our relationship with alcohol. Neither one of us would classify ourselves as alcoholics, right, Jay?
I think today I struggle with that. I know that, I have family history of alcoholism in my family. I've always really sat with that question, am I an alcoholic? What does that mean exactly? What do you have to do in order to be classified as an alcoholic? I think based on the fact that I've been drinking consistently for, since I was in my I'd say late teens, experimenting, early 20s, and then ultimately just really drinking very frequently, but not really just the frequency, binge drinking, like, frequently as well. And creating a lifestyle around that. Like, and I think a lot of people, this will resonate with a lot of people if they're being honest with themselves. Like, I would actually not schedule my more difficult or challenging things in my calendar on Mondays, possibly even Tuesdays, because my parties would start definitely by Thursday and they wouldn't end till Sunday afternoons, evenings. And, I always knew that my Monday would be, kind of recovering and, starting to feel a little bit more normal. And then by Tuesday, feeling better. And, the older you get, it actually takes a little bit longer to recover. But Wednesdays, I could fill my calendar with like amazing meetings on Wednesday. And, that lifestyle kind of just being on that hamster wheel and,
Right.
Realizing that the less I drank and the more that I spent time, doing positive things and incorporating fitness and wellness into my lifestyle, the more optimized my week was, which, for somebody who's really proud of being successful and high functioning, once I found that and had that momentum, it became something I never really wanted to break.
Yeah. And so you're struggling with that definition. And I think that's what the alcohol industry, Jay, is so good at, is because they convince you all the things we hear, especially as you just said, I'm not really sure if I am or not, because we've been told if you're not, if your marriage isn't in shambles, if you still have a job, if you're not shitting your bed at night, if you're like, there's this long list of like diabolical things. And it's like, oh yeah, you might be an alcoholic. But as long as like you got all that shit together and intact and like that's going fine, like you can drink as much as you want to, it's like either you can or you can't. Yeah. And I can admit, just because I don't feel like I'm an alcoholic, that doesn't mean I had a healthy relationship with alcohol by any means. It became a very dependable, reliable habit at the end of most nights that I was allowing, and I justified like crazy, no matter what the kind of day I had, whether I was like ending the day by myself and it was my alone time to decompress, catching up with a friend. I had something to celebrate. I had a stressful day. I worked really hard. I mean, dude, you name it. Alcohol was the reward for any part of me making it through and how the day went. And again, the alcohol industry loves that. And they pitch that message to you constantly that like this has a place in all those moments.
It's glamorous and it's okay. It's funny because, fast forward to today, I had somebody, I'm not even kidding you, a friend of mine just DM'd me on Instagram that he apologizes, but he has to unfollow me because he's in a business that is predicated on the sales of alcohol. And I'm depressing him by talking about how bad alcohol is for him. And I'm like, listen, man, all love. I love you and I'll support you any way I can. But, I'm not changing this narrative anytime soon. So I get it, it's super interesting because, alcohol has been a problem for me. Like I've put myself in many situations where it was not okay. I could have ended up dead. Things of that nature. So, I'm not the weekend warrior that is able to have, a bottle of wine and, go on with my day, et cetera. For me, it's, once I start drinking, I have no intention of stopping. And, most of the people I'm around, that's just what it is. We actually, we're proud that we drank 5 bottles of wine, the two of us, as opposed to, it's almost like you're encouraging that type of behavior as opposed to the opposite. And, listen, I lived in a fog for many years. So it's really, really cool to be able to get to know myself better than ever because, when you don't have those periods of time that are fogging you, creating anxiety and as a result, depression, you're really able to do some amazing things. Like, I feel like it's kind of a cheat code in life where you like unlock this superpower. And that's when you really find, that community of like-minded people that are operating the same way, which is how you and I have continued to push each other and get closer.
Yeah. And I also want for anybody listening who just heard Jay say, Like, oh yeah, like I had to have 7, 8 bottles of wine. I couldn't stop. If your brain just went to the justification equation of like, well, I don't do that, so I must not have a problem with alcohol. The fact that you even are starting to question if you might, I can tell you that you do, right? I never question if I have an issue with sugar or cigarettes. Like, it's not that type. I don't ever smoke. And like, if I want dessert once in a while, like I don't go into like, is this an issue for me? But if you are even remotely starting to ask yourself that question, it means you have an unhealthy relationship with the substance. And I wasn't like Jay. Like, I was never somebody who overdid it, but I consistently had a couple drinks, 5, 6, sometimes 7 nights a week, and I wouldn't take it further than that. But that still meant I'm like, what am I doing? So don't justify your way out of having the difficult conversation with yourself just because your experience is not like Jay's.
Well said.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit more about, again, I feel like, Jay, when was that now? A couple years ago when you did 75 hard? Because there's been a shift, obviously, over the time that I've known you, and you are more, which is sort of your theme for this year, more dialed in than I have ever seen you. So I want to know, one, what caused that shift for you, and two, what you're getting out of it, because there are people who can easily look at your life, my life, and it's like, oh my gosh, how boring. It must be just like all the time, just dialed in, just whatever. Where's the fun? And I'm having more fun. I'm not having any less fun than I've ever had before. So I want to hear your take on that too.
Yeah. So, really it started for me with when COVID first arrived. It was super easy to just day drink and watch Netflix, while your businesses were spiraling out of control. And quite frankly, I saw a lot of people doing that. And for me, when there's uncertainty, I need to be as focused as possible. I'm very responsible for a lot of people's well-being, beyond, my household, which obviously is extremely important. But, in a time like that, I knew for me that I had to go the opposite direction. So that was when, I was hearing a lot about the 75 Hard program. And of course, at the beginning, I was like, is this something I could even do? I don't think I had not had a drink in 75 days since I was probably in my late teens. So the concept was super foreign to me, but I said, I've also used social media as an accountability tool for myself in a lot of ways. And have a lot of friends that, we interact through social media and support group and community and whatnot. And I put it out there. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do 75 hard. And once I say I'm going to do something, I 1,000,000% am going to do it, because failure is not an option for me. That's how I've approached everything in my life. So I did 75 hard the first time, and I could not believe, it was my first experience of true clarity. Yes, it was difficult, not because of the fitness challenge per se, but the mental toughness. Doing it the first time in New York, in inclement weather, having that second workout outside, seeking discomfort, all the things that Andy Frisella talks about, and why he designed 75 Hard was very true for me. And when I finished it, I was just not the same person. And quite frankly, even if I tried, I couldn't go back to being the same person. My baseline forever changed. So that was, an amazing experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've done it a couple of times, since then. And I feel like, Jay, since you've done it a couple of times and now you're sitting here and like, you've almost just, it becomes like a lifestyle. It's no longer a program that you're looking to just finish and then go back, because I know that you've done that too. It's like, okay, I'm done with this thing. Let's go back here. And then it's like, okay, now I got to get back in this thing. It's you learn that making the uncomfortable, which oddly become comfortable, like decisions, doing the hard stuff. When I put my head on my pillow at night, it's like, how did I push myself today? Did I show up for my commitments? Did I do the things that I know are good for me tomorrow? Or did I like look for the excuses, the easy dopamine rush, the easy way out, all of those kinds of things. And like that, I don't know how different, obviously, people's moral compasses work or our guilt works, but those kinds of things, when I'm not committing to the things that I know are beneficial for me in the long run, that's what gives me actually anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, this, when you're just focusing on the thing in front of you and not thinking beyond today, and all of those, again, short-term, short immediate gratification decisions end up like making us feel like crap.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like even just saying what I said previously, like now to think about the fact that I thought that it would be difficult for me to do 75 hard,
Right.
and be where I am now, committing to not drinking alcohol, being alcohol free for 2023, and really almost every day, essentially doing the majority of the things that would be considered 75 hard, and not really understanding how I, at this point, couldn't really live this lifestyle.
Right.
I feel like I was robbing myself of such amazing things, and as a result, other people around me, by, just choosing a different lifestyle previously. And we talked offline a little bit about, thinking about how, having some regret around not starting this sooner, or, so on and so forth. Part of me, I have no regrets as far as, my life experience. I truly can say I did most things, at least once, which is pretty cool too, because, I'm able to take those experiences and incorporate them into my life, and also my family, So for me, this relationship with alcohol changed drastically, because I've also been in many shitty situations where my kids were watching, right? And those are the types of things that you're not proud of as a parent.
Right.
And I said to my boys at the end of last year, I said, I'm not going to drink next year. And, and spoke to them about it. And they brought up times where I was drunk, in their company, coming home from a dinner or a party, and they're still awake, and being in that condition, and they remember it vividly. And it's kind of fucking sad, to be honest, So I want to be better for them, myself, of course, right? But really for them.
Yeah. And Jay, we think, one of the things I don't think people think enough of is our reputation. And when we sit back and think, gosh, what would my closest friends say about me? And am I somebody that they would call in a time of crisis, or in a time of, when they need advice? Do they respect me? Do they admire me? What's being said when I'm not in the room from my kids, from my family, from my coworkers? And I think if you can sit back and think about what those things are, like, it's a really good test to figure out if you're showing up in the way that you want to be. And that's really important to me. I mean, I don't give a shit what strangers think of me, but I definitely care what you think of me, what my partner thinks of me, what my parents, what my sister, like, it's an important measure of, am I showing up in the way that I want to?
Yeah, I think, also when I turned 40, I just had a very different view and outlook on life. I realized that I was compartmentalizing different parts of my life, and I wanted to break those walls down, right? Like where I'd be in a corporate situation, in business meetings with people, where I was ashamed that, if I had a short sleeve shirt on and my tattoos were showing, I felt like I couldn't really own that, so to speak. And I was Jay in different situations, and I got really tired of that, because I feel like, I was at a place in my life where, I kind of proved to the people around me that, I can be really good at what I do and still have tattoos. I can be really good at what I do and dye my hair if I feel like it, or grow a beard, or, do all of these things that are, I kind of say that commercial real estate chose me on some level, because, I felt forced to kind of figure out what I was going to do while dealing with the loss of my mother on some level. If I didn't really have issues with alcohol and things of that nature, I might have stayed in the nightlife industry, but I very consciously made the decision to transition out of that, because quite frankly, I thought I would be dead at a young age, and I probably would have, to be honest. I look at a lot, I don't talk about that much, but a lot of my life experience, early on in my life, and especially when I lost my mom, I was okay with that concept. I was okay with not living a long life. And, that all changed, obviously, when I got married and had a family. It's actually it's emotional to say that because
Yeah.
again, I don't talk about that. But that's truly how I felt.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just the alcohol piece is something that for so long I didn't realize what it was taking from me either. And when it opens up this relationship with yourself and just like, as you said, sort of sitting when things don't go well, like your first reaction is to have a drink. And it's like, what is going on in my body that I feel I can't handle this on my own without something, supporting that? Or, I think about all of the disagreements that I've had with folks, and the ones that have been the most contentious, there was alcohol involved.
Yeah.
And so it's again, we just sort of allow this substance to permeate, and like it's just sort of part of it. Everybody does it. And Jay, when you talked about like tattoos and that kind of stuff, I think your content on Instagram now, people need examples of people that look like them, right? Like we've all always known that, just like watching women in the workplace, people of color seeing X. And I think same for alcohol. Like that's why I've been vocal too. And again, define addiction the way that you want to, but somebody who is, for me, not married with kids, has the freedom to do whatever she wants and still chooses not to. It's like, oh, that's interesting, right? Like Jack Harlow, you and I have talked about, of like
Sure.
people in that game where it's like they have access. Like, isn't that why you become a superstar? So you can like get fucked up and do those things and whatever. And it's like,
Totally.
no, man, like I want to be an amazing artist. All that's going to do is get in my way.
Yeah.
So more people that are sort of saying, and people find them cool and people find them smart and they're fun. It's like, oh, alcohol, you don't need alcohol to be any of those things. So yeah, the more examples and people speaking up about it, and showing that life is so fulfilling without it, I think is really an important movement that is starting to happen.
Yeah, even if your close friends start unfollowing you,
Yeah,
because you're saying things that they don't agree with. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it's interesting. I think it's a maturity thing as well, right? I commend you for, again, it's all about access, right? It's access, options, being able to, create a lifestyle for yourself that you can afford to, and you have a team of people in place that can make sure that, if you are on a beach somewhere, the business is running, and that was always kind of my idea of success was, I hope I build something so I can just basically go live on a beach and drink some sort of drink with an umbrella, in it and just hang out. It's funny how like those goals change and just, for me now, it's all about fulfillment. It's all about happiness. And I think that's different to everybody, but I don't think you could achieve fulfillment and happiness without doing difficult things that makes you proud of yourself, that builds confidence. And I think, a lot of people will look at, myself and the way that I operate and maybe consider me cocky on some level. And I really hope that's not the case, because I try not to be that way. I really look at myself through many different lenses, because I truly want to help other people be better than they are. And through the success that I've had doing that for myself. But I think there's a fine line between confidence and coming off arrogant or cocky. I think especially in business, and, you should be proud of, wins. You should be proud of accomplishments. And, it's challenging at times when people in your circle and sometimes your inner circle, look at you maybe more, in an envious way or in a competitive way, as opposed to that, that these things are possible and, having that kind of abundance mindset.
Yeah.
A lot of times, especially in the commercial real estate space, it's why I don't really enjoy the space, anymore. It's very much, well, if Jay is doing better, it means there's less for me, like it's very much that mentality. I actually have to remove myself, which is why I really enjoy the fitness wellness community so much more than the commercial real estate community.
Oh, yeah. And I think, listen, I think the proud of yourself is a really great question that everybody should be asking every single day.
Yeah.
It's a great question to be asking when you put your head at your pillow at night. Am I proud of the person that I was today?
Yeah.
And if you're like, I'm not really sure, like you've got some decisions to make about how you're treating yourself and other people and how you're spending, your time. And if I would, I mean, I can honestly say I'm very proud of the person I am. I feel like I make decisions in line with my values and mission, and I consciously think about those things on all the actions and activities that I do. Because again, I think the guilt of not being proud of myself would eat me alive, and not doing that. That doesn't mean that someone's priorities has to be mine and vice versa. But I know what makes me proud of myself and my actions.
It's all, you also, Ann, and I've been by your side through, people taking aim at you, right, and putting a target on you. It's very, if you're not proud of yourself and you don't put your head on the pillow at night saying, I'm doing the right thing, I'm a good person, like though, if you truly don't feel that about yourself,
Right.
when people are shooting arrows at you, it's really tough to stay centered and be able to keep pushing forward when you're under fire. And, something as simple as, like, again, a buddy of mine today just literally be like, hey, dude, like, can't hear this narrative anymore. I'm unfollowing you, but it's all love. It's like, oh, fuck, really? Like, shit, that's my homie. Like, but, I'm sorry he feels that way. But again, it's all love,
Right.
And I said, walking out of the gym after training this morning, I just looked into my camera on my Insta story and I said, I hope you checked the boxes this morning and got your sweat in, because curveballs are coming your way and I hope you knock them out of the park.
Yeah.
That's what we do as entrepreneurs, as people in business, as people that are not afraid to put themselves on camera and put it out into the universe when other people are going to talk negatively and come at you because of their own insecurities. Like, I don't give a fuck about other people's opinions of me, because at the end of the day, it's really, really sad if they truly don't have the confidence in themselves to make something of themselves, because they have one life to live. So What are you going to do? Like, are you going to sit in the, we talk about this all the time. Are you going to sit in the stands and talk shit about the people on the field? Like, no, get on the fucking field.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, you learn, and sometimes you have to go through it. When I was a 20-some-year-old and didn't know myself very well yet, and people were taking shots at me, I was just like, oh my gosh, is that true? Is that what people say? And you sort of want to go knocking on doors and explain yourself. And obviously the older you get, you realize, listen, if you've got a big enough profile, or even if you don't, friends, family, people are going to judge you if you do and judge you if you don't. Some people just love to talk, and it makes them feel better about that. But to your point, Jay, when you are so certain about who you are, that's, again, that BuzzFeed article that came out 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, whatever, about me. It's like, the reason I think it wasn't so rattling was because of that, of like, I know who I am. And this article paints me one way, and I can see that, but that is not who I am. And that is not going to take me down. It would have been different if it was like, yeah, I really was abusing people or do these things. Like, that might have been a different story of me checking myself and saying I need to step away. But it wasn't that. And I think that's a really important lesson to take from this podcast. It's get really certain on the type of person you are. And frankly, not just saying the type of person you are. If you don't have consistent examples of the values, right? Brene Brown actually has a great exercise where she challenges you to pick these 3 values. And it's not just deciding, right? Oh, I'm these things. It's no. You need to write down 10 examples, if not more, and not just once. What about this year, last year, the year before, where you honored that value, that you displayed, that you exercised that value, instead of just you hoping that you like exude this thing? Because, as you know, talk is cheap and action is where all of that stuff is. So
yeah, I really think also, the most important thing is self-awareness, right? Like, I think as a proud alpha male, I've defended myself out of pride and ego for, again, far too long, through my life. I would say, up until I turned 40 and my mindset started to change. I really started to look within and realize that I had a lot of shitty qualities. Like there were a lot of things that I put a wall up against and acted as if I was better than I actually was. And that's when the work started. That's when I really started to work on myself. And, and the work's never done. And I'm human. And like, regardless of the fact that I will check the majority of the boxes, if not all of the boxes that I expect to check for myself today, I could still, be off and not know exactly what it is that's bothering me. And if somebody comes at you in that moment of weakness, you don't know how you're going to react. And, all I do know is I will never have a drink in 2023. Like, you know what I mean? And as a result of that, like that accomplishment with which, when I started 75 Hard, and I would never have ever said that I will not drink for a full calendar year. And the thought of that now is just not scary. It's exciting. So it's weird how you can really change in a short amount of time.
Yeah. I forget the dude's name, who was in Entourage, Adrian
Grenier. Yeah.
Grenier. There's a great podcast with him, actually, with Rich Roll, where it was right before COVID, and his girlfriend, did you hear this one?
Of course.
Yeah. Broke up with him. And he's like, what? You're breaking up with me? Like, I have everything. And she just says, you're a terrible person. Like, you are a terrible and I want nothing. Like, this is not who I want to be with. And he was just like a ton of bricks. And he asked her to like really give it to him and explain and whatever. And she did. And he, because
changed his whole life.
Totally.
Like complete 180.
I mean, this guy now lives on a farm, and obviously he had to do the work on himself and figure out if that's who he really wanted to be.
They got back together, right?
They did. They did.
I wonder if they're still together. I'd like to know
think they're married. I'm pretty sure they're married. But they live on a farm and all about sustainability and just like his whole world of what was important. Same thing, chasing the parties, the ego, the cars, all of those types of things. And I also, guys, want to tell you, if you're into cars and like having a Lamborghini is by all means, like work toward having a Lamborghini. But if you're in it for the ego and you're in it just for like the chasing because you're trying to mask up insecurities, like that's the difference, right? You can have a Lamborghini and have great self-esteem and not be insecure, right? I
1,000,000%. Listen, I'm an obsessed car person. I've bought and sold 4 cars in the last, year and a half. I'm not normal. I grew up in a car dealership family, so that was like just normal for us to have access to different cars. I agree with you though, Ann, because ultimately, there were not many things I enjoyed, like at this point, right? So having goals and aspirations and rewarding yourself for the hard work you're doing, I think is really important, right? So to each their own. For, some people are very into watches. Some people are into things that, would have no interest. I'd have no interest in. And I think it's to each their own. But there are plenty of people out there kind of, hustle culture, renting the Lamborghini and taking photos, that is not what we're talking about. Yeah.
And guys, as somebody who's worked to create her wealth, like I've learned and understood what money means to me. And I have on these, I joke about, I have on these $30 white Amazon shoes that I love, and my friends make fun of me for it. And I'm like, I don't know anything about brands, and it's not shaming people if they do. I just don't care. I'm like, these shoes could cost $2,000 and I would still buy them because I like them.
Yep.
And like, I like how they feel on my feet and I like how they look. So it's what I have learned of getting money over the years and earning money. Don't let anybody tell you how to value money. My guys at Goldman Sachs, want to try to convince me that my money, with my pot of money with them, needs to continue to grow. And that podcast I was telling you about with Bill Perkins, when he just beautifully explains the intersection of time, health, and wealth, it's like, on what planet is like growing my net worth till the day I die? To explain how that makes any logical sense.
Yeah. Actually, I listened to the podcast and I'm halfway through Die with Zero now. And, I think the philosophy is amazing. It's, it's really about, time, right? Like that. Think about it. He said it actually on the podcast, or it's part of the book, where, you know, would a 20-year-old with zeros in their bank account trade with a 90-year-old billionaire?
Jay, I don't even think that 20-year-old would trade with a 30-year-old. Like, you want 10 million bucks and you want to trade 10 years of your life? People would be like,
well, that's interesting. I'd be curious to see, because I think people would trade from, if you're 20 years old with zero money and you're a 30-year-old with millions of dollars in your bank account, some people might choose that. But ultimately, I think some would actually. It's
well, why don't you take it? How old are you today?
46.
Would you tomorrow for $10 million go to 56?
No, but I'm also older. Like, I have less time. I also have a career and a foundation that I've built over 22 years of hard ass work. For somebody that's early on, that doesn't really have something, like, it's the insecurity of, wait a minute, am I going to find something that I'm a thought leader in an industry as a result of, because I've spent the time? And think about it. How tough was it for you to get where you are today? It's day in and day out, sacrificing so many other things. I, quite frankly, don't know a lot of young people that would go through what you did to get where you are.
Well, one, I loved every part of it because I love the process. And two, you don't know it when you're in it of how hard it is. So let me take it the opposite, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
If I could put you back to 36, but it's going to cost you everything you got, pretty much, would you do that?
Hell no. I love 46. I love where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. But then again, we're talking about other issues that I was dealing with for the last decade, So right. It took me a while to get where I am, and a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. So, no, because it doesn't equate to dollars.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, the exercise, you guys, is so good to do, because you will realize if, like, are you living your life the way that you want to be? And what you're saying is really important to you. Is it actually that important? And I like, again, there's just, and I feel like I've had a pretty healthy relationship with money, but it does make me think. I had found myself in the last, 6 to 9 months in that once I phase of like, oh yeah, once I sell solid core, in its entirety, then I'm like, why can't I do some of these things now? Like, I have the money to do them. My body is healthy and able. Who knows, in the next year what can happen? Like, I need to start having a little bit more of a balance there. Not, again, 100% over to the other side of things, but it's really important to think, what in this decade that you're living in is available and accessible to you that may not be there in the next decade due to either marriage, kids, whether it's, aging, which I have my own views on, financial, whatever, just, the great reef might not be there. Like, there's all of these things to consider, and how valuable is it to you? And then the same question, like, is the risk worth the reward? Is the security of 40 grand in your bank account worth sacrificing the trip to Africa with your kids, I think his example is. And I think having the debate and figuring out what the answer is helps you feel good about the decisions and the life that we're living.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear his, perspective, obviously, on risk, right? And I've been a major risk taker. Like, I have 3 motorcycles. I was never concerned about my health and well-being, up for the earlier part of my life. So, when he talks about going wakeboarding on vacation and weighing out the risk of getting injured wakeboarding while on that vacation with a boat ready to go, with his buddies on the boat ready to go, and him saying no because, he didn't really calculate when's the next time that I'm going to be able to do this. No time soon. And that outweighs the fact that, yes, I could potentially get injured, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's interesting because at a certain level, you could analyze the hell out of everything and take the joy out of things too. But, I think it is important to be mindful of these things, because so many people get so caught up in their everyday life that they kind of live in a bubble and are not even realizing, holy shit, 10 years just went by. What did you do in those 10 years? How much did you enjoy those memories? Like, well, it goes fast.
It goes fast. It's like when I ask you, well, oh my God, what's your favorite thing to do? And they're like, ski. And I'm like, oh, you must go all the time. It's like, I go once a year. I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
Like, how can this be your favorite thing to do? but you haven't built the life where you can go, you know, on a consistent basis or be someplace in the winter.
I'm guilty of it. I mean, I'm guilty of it.
You
I'm
know,
a huge snowboarder. It's one of my happiest things in life, always was. And it's just, I don't make the time.
Well, but Jay, as you've told me, it's not a but, you should make the time, but you know, your kids are old enough now where, you know, that's something you're going to be doing with them. And now you get two birds with same stone, quality time with your kids and an activity that you really enjoy. And, you know, that's important too. It's a kind of why I sold the Dominican house. You know, it's like, okay, this volleyball court's going to have to come down in the backyard because I've got neighbors who are complaining. The volleyball court for me is a big reason why I love the DR house. And that's going to take away so much of the value and experience for me here. It no longer makes financial sense for me to keep it. Some people might think that's nuts. I don't care. That's my happy place and joy is when I'm not working and not working out and, you know, doing things. When I have an activity of choice, it's beach volleyball. And I want to put myself in a situation that I can do that on a consistent basis. So yeah, I just thought the process, if you guys are, it's Bill Perkins, Die with Zero is his book. Also a great podcast with Peter Attia. Just really helps you sit and reflect, you know, that you're making these conscious choices about your life so that when you get, you know, in your 70s and 80s, you're not like sitting there with regret of, I can't believe I, you know, constantly saved all this money and didn't go do any of the things I wanted to do. And now it's less enjoyable when I'm at this age. So
yeah, I think it's interesting too, because I think most people, you know, generations before us are really, you know, my father included, are, you know, he's 78, not in the greatest health and concerned about, you know, spending, he has money, but he's concerned about going out to a nice restaurant for dinner. Like,
yeah,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Like,
yeah,
enjoy whatever food you want. Like,
totally. And I tell my family this too, is that, you know, I randomly will give, you know, I'll give strangers money. I give people money. I do these sort of things, you know, and you think about having a will, Jay, and I'm like, I don't want to leave money when I'm not, you know, one, I'm going to outlive a lot of the people that I have money in that will, God willing. And two, like, what's if I don't and they live a long life, I'm going to give you this money when you're like 80 and 90 years old to do what with?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
and it's so silly. If you have money that you want to share today, and my mom does the same thing. She doesn't have a ton of money, but there's a big part of her overall feeling like a responsible adult that she has money to leave her kids. You know, it's like why she works so hard.
Yeah.
So even though I don't want to steal that moment from her, I'm just like, Mom, you're still young and able enough that like you're so healthy at 66 years old. Go spend this. Like, we don't need it.
Enjoy your life.
Yeah. Yeah. But we have just this thing about leaving money behind. It makes us feel like we, again, are responsible and whatnot. So people don't talk about money enough, in my opinion, their relationship with it, what it means to them. It can do a lot of good, but it can also really mess with you. So I encourage all of you guys to have better conversations with money, with yourself and with your loved ones. All right, Jay. So if people today, you know, because you are somebody that I reference a lot and look to a lot and again, admire in that regard of making your life is just so different now, even when it was years ago. Yeah. And you are just this like shining example. And I think a lot of people, once they get into their 40s, feel like they're past their prime, you know, except carrying an extra 15, 20 pounds on them. Sure. It just, you know, they just sort of accept mediocrity. So what would be your advice to someone in, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, who like is feeling, like they're just like, things are fine, but life is pretty mediocre. Like, where do you get someone to start?
Yeah, but I think that, you know, it's really infectious, right? Like if you start doing something different than what you typically do, whether that's, you know, starting with walking or going out for a jog or strength training or whatever it is, you feel good. And not only do you feel good, but, you know, you start to show up a little bit differently. People start noticing after time goes on and you're consistent with it, which feels good. And then ultimately you start looking better. And, right. You know, for me, it was always that momentum that kind of, you know, not only kept me going, but encouraged me to kind of continue, you know, gradually taking it up a notch.
So it's movement, you think, like?
Oh, yeah. So I think that, well, it's funny because to do what I do, I need to, it's really about being as clear as possible, right? Like making a lot of decisions in a day, both personally and professionally. I just want to be clear. I want to feel as good as I possibly can to be able to operate it at a high level. And my morning routine is what provides that for me, right? So, and not just the morning, my whole day, which I refer to as dialed, which is what you were mentioning in the intro. So for me, it's, I have to get I have to get a fasted workout in every morning. Okay. So I intermittent fast religiously for probably going on 4 or 5 years at this point. So I don't eat till 1 p.m. So it's either a cardio workout, a fitness class, or strength training at the gym, whatever it is for that day. And then I do a few different things just to set myself up for the day. And then I go about my day, and I eat similarly to you, Ann. I eat very simple, similar things. I like to make as few decisions around my food, around how I'm dressing for the day. I essentially wear a very similar outfit every day. I also try to wear outfits that allow me to jump in and out of workouts if they present the opportunity during the day, or even just to walk out of my office and go for a walk around the block.
Yeah.
So I'm always in sneakers, which is acceptable now, finally. So, it's those types of things. And, I think that just looking at it as trying to be 1% better today than you were yesterday in all areas of your life. I spoke about this with our mutual friend, Greg Scheinman, and he was like, that sounds crazy, Jay. Like you're trying to, fill all your buckets every day. I'm like, I'm trying to. Doesn't mean I'm successfully filling every bucket every day, but at least I'm mindful of, the 4. I break my buckets into 4. A while ago, probably like 5-6 years ago now, somebody described this concept to me of, your mind, your body, your business, and your relationships as like 4 buckets to be mindful of, and picture them as tables, legs on a table. And the minute that you're not, kind of keeping them equal, obviously a leg gets wobbly, the table falls over. Yeah. And that, I'm very visual. So like once that was explained to me, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. So I truly try to just at least be mindful of those things, as opposed to early in my career, 1,000,000% of my energy went into my business. Right. And my relationships around me were shit. And, then I was married, and, I was not home frequently and traveling a ton, and, not being mindful of my relationship with Danielle, my relationship with my kids, so on and so forth. So it'll never be perfect, but if you're mindful of these things and, checking the boxes every day, you go to bed satisfied at least and proud of yourself for the day.
Yeah. And Jay, I actually think it is doable, because what you just said, as long as you're shoving out the other noise when things come, of like, if this doesn't contribute to one of the legs of the table that I am building and that I find honorable, it's a no. I talked about this with Brett, and it's just like when someone wants to have coffee or a friend wants to whatever, like, as we're building ambition right now. And that means I can't take on a whole nother project and have the same amount of time that I had before. So it goes in phases. And I am picky as F on who I spend time with. People ask all the time, do you want to go on this trip, go coffee? Hey, I really can't right now. Thanks for considering me. But you have to get really clear on, does the thing, just because you aren't doing something with somebody else doesn't mean that you're available, right? Like there are Friday nights where I've spent working. There are Saturday mornings where I've spent working. Like it's because that's where my priorities are right now. So if you can get clear on like, my priorities are, launching this new business, right? It's Brett. It's my health and my wealth. It's keeping me in a place where I can feel like my schedule, that I don't get off my workouts. Like this is how I make decisions. And if it doesn't contribute to advancing this, it's a no.
I'm sure a lot of people listening right now are guilty of this. I've been very guilty of it. Just because you're busy does not mean you're productive, right? Mm-hmm. So at a certain point in life, in business, you start to realize that in a lot of ways, less is more, where you have to really look at and prioritize where you should be spending your time. We all have the same amount of time in the day, right? Like nobody can argue that. If you're spending your time with people that want to quote unquote pick your brain because they're starting a business, or want to meet you for coffee because they want to understand what real estate's like, or what ambition's like, or it becomes, your whole day can go by and you really accomplished nothing that gets you closer to your goals.
Right.
And I think that's like the biggest lesson that you've actually helped me tremendously with, and other really, really high functioning people that I know are so critical about who they're spending their time with and how it's spent. And I need to get better at that. I'm better now, but I need to be even better at that. And it's also, I'm a people pleaser.
I was going to just say that.
You know?
I don't think that I would never have tagged you that, Jay. But again, if you feel that you are, it's something to be mindful of. But yeah, it's like, and it's just like, I'm sorry. Like the answer is no. Like good luck with your business. I don't have time to take that on right now.
But what it is I have high emotional intelligence, and I'm involved in so many different things with so many different teams. So I know when I'm lacking in something and people need my attention and they need my face time. So I'm already anticipating that, because I have a great gut to understand, you know what, I need to spend a little bit more time over there, but I need to do it in a way that's efficient as possible,
right,
and not take away from these other things that may be a higher priority, but I still need to do that thing. But I need to do it in a way where it's not a crazy trip, and so on and so forth. You need to do it as efficiently as possible, but you also need to, again, you need to be, you need to keep all the balls in the air, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you what, and I have two questions for you. When I was starting back on my feet, I did not spend time with one person outside of my family that wasn't a volunteer at Back on My Feet, a member, a donor, somebody that was benefiting that organization. Now, you could call that selfish. I'm like, I don't really care. I knew what I was trying to do, and anything outside of that was just a distraction. And it was like, this isn't pushing this forward. And I am so fixated on this thing. And I don't want anything, not literally, like there wasn't one person that was not involved in that organization one way or another that I was spending any real quality time with. I was that dialed in, and it worked. Like that thing grew across the country. We raised millions of dollars. It was on every national, like when you put that much energy into something, that much time into it, you just are, you're outworking, outpacing everybody else. So
it's obsession and passion. And that's why when I said, Ann, how difficult was it to do what you've done, et cetera, you're like, yeah, well, I don't think about it that way because I loved every minute of it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, because you're obsessed and passionate about what you're doing, which I think is if anybody can take one thing from this podcast, it's that if you are not obsessed or passionate about what it is you do every single day, you are wasting time.
Yeah, agree. And some people say, oh, Jay, I don't know what that is. How do I find it? Listen, you've got to pay attention, right? What do you love doing? What are you good at? Like what problem can you solve by putting those things together, and then how do you go start doing it? Is it going to be scary? Yeah, probably. But dude, it's been scary for any entrepreneur in the beginning, and get your expectations in check. Stop expecting it just to be guaranteed, because that's never going to happen. And there's no guarantee. If people say that, no guarantee in life, there isn't any relationship. When you walk out the door that day, like nothing is. So stop letting that stand in your way of not doing the thing. Like, no, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that is okay.
Go for it.
Okay. I got time for one question. I have like a list of 5, but I'm just going to ask you for you today, Jay. Success changes for us, as we just talked about on the podcast, right? Success for you is finding the other high before us. So I want to bookend that. When you put your head on your pillow at night now, how do you know if you've had a successful day?
Staying as true to myself as possible, regardless of, again, other people having their own opinions of it. It's typically people that are really close to you. You need to understand that self-care is the most important thing, and it's not what other people perceive as important for themselves. It's what's truly important to you, right? So there are things I had a conversation earlier today. It's like, you spend so much time getting tattooed and, so on and so forth. Yeah, but I basically spend my entire life when I'm awake, I'm doing what you were talking about earlier, as far as I'm spending time with people that can help me on my mission. It's an obsession of mine. Everything that I do is purposeful, right? So for me, if I look at my own downtime as being at a tattoo parlor, sitting down with nobody talking to me, in the zone, getting tattooed because it makes me feel good, that's what makes me feel good. You don't need to understand that. It's not a waste of my time because it's a very high priority for me.
Yeah.
That might sound insane to a lot of people,
right.
but it's therapeutic to me. I really, truly enjoy it. And I think that, that you have to take other people into consideration, of course. But at the end of the day, if your cup is not full, you cannot pour into anybody else's cups. And the people who are saying these things typically are the ones that need you to pour into their cups.
Yeah. And I think reason I love that question is everybody's had a different answer.
Yeah.
And it's another reminder that guys, just because Jay has this idea of success doesn't mean it to be yours. And we so often chase, these societal, these biological, these familial sort of norms and pressures on what we think we're supposed to want. And you got to get really clear on how you're going to fall in love with your own life. And I can tell you, my brother and sister, would hate my life. My sister lives on a pretty much, in desolate Grand Forks, North Dakota, with like one neighbor around for 20 miles and like loves her life and wouldn't change it for the world. Where, I just got back from LA last night and I got a flight in 2.5 hours. Like, it's like she would lose her mind. But that's
most people would, most people would. But that's what fills your cup, right? Like, and I think it's interesting because I didn't really say what success is to me, but that's where I'm at in my life. Like, I want to feel good. Okay. So whatever I consider feeling good and whatever boxes that I need to check to make myself feel good need to get checked every single day. And that will have the most positive ripple effect on everybody around me. And if I'm having a positive impact, then I'm happy.
Right. Yep. And you're now at a phase where you know what those things are to make your cup full. So
what else I know, Ann?
What?
They're going to be different a year from now and 3 years from now.
If you're doing it right, they are. Like, that's the beauty of it. Like, I want to look at the end of my life and be like, I lived 15 different lives because I question, I'm curious. That doesn't matter. This isn't important to me anymore. Why not? Okay, I'm going to change my life to do this. And my biggest fear is just having the same predictable life day in, day out. Again, somebody else might want that and that serves them. That is my biggest nightmare of like, how am I pushing myself and how was my life different than it was last year? So
nobody listening is concerned that you're not going to push yourself.
Well, thanks for the validation. Jay, where can people find you?
Jason Siano. No, I take that back. It's Jay Siano, JAY_Siano, SIANO on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. That's where
that's what I tell people too. It's like one medium. There's just so many ways. I'm like, that's all I can commit.
Go to Instagram. You could find all these other things about me elsewhere from there. So
right.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for the time, energy, and all of the advice and knowledge that you shared with everybody today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.